Welcome to the Undiscovered Gems podcast, hosted by NBA legend and business powerhouse Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds.
Today we have a guest on our show. His name is Sabastian. Ladies and gentlemen, Sil is the professional of the year. He is a life change and self-change coach. He's also an author. Sil, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Charles. Yes, that's a good introduction. However, I have to add that I am also a sharer of mourners culture. Now, my programs that I do, the Life Change and Self-Program, very extensive, very comprehensive, very sophisticated programs, a minimum of 4 months typically, usually go a year, because they're really about change. But also what I write about, it all fits together into the greater umbrella of mourners culture, which is an alternative paradigm culture to our prevailing paradigm culture, which is the superiority paradigm. That sounds all very fancy, a lot of big words, but it just means that I'm coming at things from a very, very different way of doing things. Things that don't conform to our typical stuff that doesn't quite make sense, right? We want to really, really have things make sense, where they truly connect to you. And also, I don't teach anything that requires belief. In fact, I don't even teach, I just share. See, right there, it's already a different paradigm. What do you mean you have courses and you don't teach? What do you mean you don't want me to believe what you're saying? No, I absolutely never want anybody to believe one word I say. It has to make sense to you. And hopefully, what I focus on, everything I do, it's based on self-evident sensibilities. No belief required. So I'm just sharing as to illustrate how profoundly different I come at matters. And that's just one angle of things. Everything, very different. When you change paradigms, you change everything. Make sense, Charles?
Mourners. We're going to find out.
Yes.
Mourners in superiority.
Yes.
So
Right.
I'll ask you, Sil, when you say you don't necessarily need someone to believe,
Correct.
you want them to self-discover what they think they understand.
Right.
So talk a little bit more about that. I heard what you said, but let's dig into that a little bit. So
Right.
if someone does not understand,
Now,
but if you don't care about their belief, then what knowledge do they walk away with?
all right. So what I share, my main program is the core, the fundamental one that starts everything. And from there are others where you go more in detail, more sophisticated, specialized, etc.
Mhm.
The core program is called Way of Impeccability. Now, you say, well, what does that mean? Well, just think about it a bit. Just those first two words, like if you said the way of patience, the way of peace, the way of love, you understand that this is a way of living, a way of being that's connected to those terms. Well, in my case, it's connected to impeccability. So impeccability is the key, the glue, the underlying fundamental that you tie to it. So now when somebody comes to the program, what they're going to take away with, the subtitle is A Toolbox for Deliberate Living. So they're going to come away with tools, specific techniques, strategies, understandings, awarenesses, but they are all, in essence, they're all tools that the person can go and use in order to live deliberately and, of course, to live with impeccability. But we want to have those both together, because we can be impeccable but not necessarily deliberate, and vice versa. When we add the two together, we have impeccability and deliberate living. Now we live in a whole different way of living. Just think for yourself. Whenever you've been truly deliberate about something, you've been motivated, you had clear intent, you knew what you were going to do, and it enhanced your life, right? It gave you purpose and function and motivation. It's life-changing to live deliberately. And also, you are acting, when you're acting deliberately, you are exercising capital C choice. Your choice, not somebody else's choice. When you're being truly, truly deliberate, you are living according to you, Charles, you. Now, how do we get here in the program? I have a few particular techniques that I use. One is repeat backs and the other one is takeaways. They also tasks and exercises, but particularly in repeat backs and takeaways. These are fundamental to understanding. Typically, we go about and we say, do you understand? Well, I remember when I was a kid, right? And the kid goes, I understand. And they run away and tell their friends what they understood. And it's completely and utterly different, right? You remember this? Yeah. It was nothing like you, but wait. That's not what I said. Too late. He's told his friends what he thought he understood has gone, right? Or she. However, in Way of Impeccability, any of the programs that I do, I share material, which are the tools, the understanding, laying it out. Then your task as a participant is to do a repeat back of what you see. The program is online and it's all there, right? You got to present a repeat back. Now, first you write it down, and then we come on Zoom or something like this. And now it's like, you come twice a week for 2 hours, and you share your repeat back, right? With me, and when Bina joins us as a co-facilitator, you share it. Now, what's the value for you? You say, well, I'm just saying what you said. Much value. First of all, you're putting it in your words. You're saying it as in Charles's words, Charles's vocabulary, Charles's understandings, Charles's connections, and you're doing so to check that you actually did understand. Right? How do you know you understood? Unless you check it back with the source, right? Very much like every single time we communicate over the internet, right? What does the internet do? It sends my message to you. Your computer sends it right back to me to say, is this what you sent to me? And my computer says yes, right? It's every single message that we send is always confirmed that way, right? It's checked, right? It's quality checked, so we don't end up with garbled stuff. Same thing that we're going to do. So when you share back your repeat back to me, you now telling me in your words what you've understood me to mean. When you actually do this very consciously and deliberately, you aren't just repeating from memory what was said, which, as we all know, right? How many times have you been watching the TV and somebody came and, oh, you're not listening to me. And you say, yes, I am. What did I say? And you repeat back to them verbatim. You know you weren't listening, but you could still repeat it back verbatim, right? Your memory could hold it. So memory is absolutely very, very, very tricky when it comes to understanding. When you can say something in your own words, that's when we start to get to understanding. And then when you check it with the source, that's how you know. So that's the main key for the understanding. Plus, now we get to the takeaways. What is it that you've taken away from this that you find useful? What do you put in your soul's pocket, in your spirit's bag? Right, that you say, I want to work on this. This matters to me. This is like a life-changing point of understanding here. Wow, this is a big deal. Those are the things that you take away. When you share that, it's further emphasis. And I'm a very sophisticated user of emphasis. Emphasis literally rewires our brains. I mean, literally, it actually physically changes the brain. Right? It's really fantastic. So when you emphasize these points of understanding, you've put it in your own words. So there's a further benefit to this that's absolutely profound and absolutely key and integral to Way of Impeccability. When you do that repeat back and this point in your own words, you make it your own. And when you make it your own, it's now yours. That's why you don't need to believe me. You have figured it out. You've seen the sensibility of it. You've connected all the dots. And we use two main techniques for that. First one is thinking things through to the end. And I have to shout that to the end because whenever I write it, the to the end is all capitalized, right? So it's very important to go to the end because as any scientist will tell you, if you do an experiment 95% of the way, you don't finish it, you could end up with vastly different results, right, Charles? It's very important. The other tool is perspective shifting to multiple perspectives. Yeah, don't just look at things from one angle. When you look at things from all the different angles, you get to see the greater whole. Yeah. The example I always use here is if you want to understand the floor plan of a house, but you can only look in through the windows, you can do it. But you can't see the whole floor plan. You look in through multiple windows and you can construct that floor plan. That's what we do with knowledge. That's what we do with understanding. We have to rely on that greater whole. So there's a very sophisticated learning psychology underlying what I'm doing. And you do it. You as the participant do it. That's why I don't teach. Right? I just share the tools. You do what's asked of you to do. You do your repeat backs. You do your takeaways. You do the tasks and exercises. And you apply, because without application, it's all meaningless. So the repeat backs, takeaways, they are actually application. Of course, the tasks and exercises where you're going to go out, during the week between our Zoom sessions, where you're going to practice things and do things, right? I have to do everything about Way of Impeccability is application. That's the key. Yeah, you can't rely on memory. Memory is no good. Memory is like when you download things onto your hard drive. When you download that new program, it just sits there on your hard drive. It doesn't make any difference to you or the update to your operating system. It's only when you install it, and that installing is application. And then you got to run it for a little while to see if there are bugs and flaws. And if there are, you got to tweak those. And that's how we come to this, to answer your question, right? See how you asked me this deep, profound question. You get this huge answer. And I'm cutting it short because we're short of time. Right? This is how we make sure you don't need to believe me. Because if you're believing me, you're living my life, not yours.
Well, what you just said just now kind of bodes well based on the repeat back, because when you
Yes,
do repeat back, the individual creates neural pathways in their own
exactly.
brain,
Exactly.
and it stabilizes the content,
Exactly.
and it does make the content their own content.
Correct. Correct. Or at least it's the
However,
first step to making it their own, right? Because you can
that's
understand what I'm saying, but you may not agree. So then you yourself have to go to that last step of the repeat back, if you so choose, which is making it your own. And this is a profound concept. It's in our Dictionary of Power, which is another profound tool that we use. The Dictionary of Power is truly that. It gives you power. It's a list of conceptions. So yes, very important, Charles, to go that extra
so the
step.
repeat back. I was going to say, however, whatever you're repeating back, uh, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone else's words, phrase that you're
No,
repeating it back to make your own. It has to be your own thought based on what someone
exactly.
said. So,
Exactly.
so
So
I'm
yeah,
asking you the question. I'm really
yeah,
asking the question: is it repeating someone's words,
no,
or is it repeating someone's content based on your own words and you repeat it
correct.
back?
It's
Okay,
repeating what's been presented to you in your own words.
your
That's
own.
crucial.
There you have.
That's crucial. Yeah. Because like I said, I mean, we've seen it on TV, right? The husband is watching TV and the wife comes and she's talking in his ear and he wants to watch the game. And so, you're not listening to me. And he says, oh, I am. And he said, oh, what did I say? And he repeats back to her what she said. That's not a repeat back. That's just memory. That's just saying it verbatim. That means nothing, because both of them know he wasn't really listening to her, right? He didn't understand what she meant. If she had said to him, give me a repeat back in your own words of what I said, he would not be able to do it, right? He'd be screwed. Yeah, he'd be in trouble,
Right.
right? So
Well,
very
still,
different.
I actually believe you. I believe what we talked
Yeah,
about on uh, the repeat back. So, but
yeah, it's huge.
but I'm not supposed to believe.
Exactly, exactly. But it made sense to you. You didn't need to believe me. It made sense to you, right, Charles? You
I
say, oh,
understand
yeah,
what
when
you're
I
saying.
think about it, I got it. And
Makes sense.
that's important. That's important.
I
Yeah,
get the difference. I get the difference. Let's talk about self and life change. Um, and you mentioned previously, and some dialogue we had before the show started. That was like a 4-month program, I think you said. But
minimum, correct.
talk a little bit more about you working with individuals and the success you've had. Give us an example of life changing or self changing an individual to move forward in their
Right.
life.
I'll give you a nice example. My very, very first participant actually came in as a post-beta tester. I had it all set up, and I just wanted to confirm. For me, I never take anything for granted. I want to make sure that I don't just believe that this thing is right and good, that it is actually so. Right? Therefore, the post-beta tester. And so this is Bina now, who was going to join us on the show, but for technical reasons couldn't, and who has become a co-facilitator. So we had somebody come on an interview just on Zoom, and we're chatting because they're interested in the program, but they want to hear more. And so she asked Bina, she said, Bina, as a participant who has completed a way of impeccable and who's living it every day, what difference has it made to you? And Bina said, I have acquired peace of being. I have acquired peace of being. And the prospective participant, her name was Sue, and Sue said, that's what I want. That's what I want. Sign me up. And Sue, who was also a life coach in a very niche field, but nonetheless also did coaching. This enhanced her business and exploded her business, not because there's a business focus to it, but because when you are in tune with yourself, your productivity enhances, your value enhances, your self-doubt goes away. You act with confidence, not a BS confidence of bombasticness, but a confidence based on that you know what it is that you're doing. You can trust yourself because you are in touch and connected to your real self, not your societal self. Two different things. Two different things. As a
Mm.
celebrity, you know the difference between your inner self and your public self. Sometimes that can be really huge, and likely you probably know other celebrities that didn't quite know how to reconcile the two, and their public selves were a bit on the BS side, and their inner selves didn't quite care for it, and they ended up in trouble, right? Psychologically, emotionally, they ended up stressed. So it's very important when you live from your real self. That's what the life change and the self change is all about. To get to who you really are, already are. It's not so much for me. I don't think that you're going to learn to become. No, you already are your real self. You're just living alternately because you think you need to, you think you should. Should is a very corruptive, subversive term in Mourner's culture. Big deal.
Mm. I hear you. So what about the fact that, you just mentioned celebrities? I find still that most celebrities that are grounded uh, understand that what they do is not who they are. It's really
Exactly.
what they do. It's really what they do. So you've touched on it a little bit. So now, when it comes to self change, life change, those that understand that it's what they do and it's not who they are, you're you can work with them a lot easier.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
you're separating the two. But what about those that have it combined? How do you really deal with them? How do you
Right.
help them move forward? Because they're believing that themselves
Yes.
they are celebrity.
Yes, yes. Now, in Way of Impeccability, the very first module one, session one, is called clarity of intent. Not clarity of motivation, not clarity of goals, not clarity of ambition, not even clarity of aspiration, but clarity of intent, and not clarity of intention. I kind of scold
Mm,
the internet a little bit every time this comes up. There's a massive
mm,
difference between intention and intent. Intentions are like wishes and hopes. And like we all know the saying, oh, well, he had good intentions, but still he caused trouble, right? What do your intentions matter? They don't matter anything. It's how you act. Intent, on the other hand, is something incredibly potent and incredibly profound. Right? When you have a strong intent, this is a commitment that you are making to do whatever it is that you intend to do. All your
mm,
energy goes into this, all your focus, all your actions. Plus, there's more. This is where mourners comes into it. When we set an intent, it's something that you need to maintain, because an intent is like when you start to push a car, right? It's the car that's not on. Today, people don't push cars as much in the old days, but you have to put your car to get it started, right? You know that you have to put a lot of energy to get that car moving. Once it's moving, you've got to keep some energy on it, not quite as much as initially to overcome the inertia, but you've got to keep some to maintain the
mm,
momentum. That's exactly how intent is. When you set it up, you've got to make an extraordinary effort, and then you've got to maintain that intent. But here's the reason why to intent is so potent, because it's not only dependent on you. The moment you start to set an intent, you engage the universe. Now, you don't have to believe me. This is to say, well, but still, now you're asking me to believe me. Go and try it, and you'll see what I mean. Just actually test it, right? And you'll see that stuff happens that assist you in your intent. Intent is a most incredibly potent thing. Now, for you to get benefit from intent, whether you believe me or not is irrelevant. Just go and do it and set it. Now, I'm not going through all the steps for setting an intent. There's very particular
mhm,
stuff, right? But still, we get it. We know this. We understand it from our common understanding, because the word itself, when you get into it a bit more, you think about it, tells you what it is. So, to answer your question of how we connect to somebody's realness or not, when we get into that very first module, my question is, what is your intent for doing this program? Well, I want to be
mm,
more famous. Then we'll go into that. I'm not going to say that's a poor intent, but just let's say for argument's sake, right? Well,
mm,
I want to get more approval. Those are a bit shallow. If you always after approval, when you think it through, say, well, I said to you, well, all right, George, you're coming here and you want to get more approval. doesn't that mean, though, if you should get it, that your joy is now going to be dependent on the approval of others? Yes, says George. Said, doesn't that make you vulnerable, George? And George said, well, I never really thought of it that way. Yeah, now the lack of withdrawal, the lack of approval, that's going to be a negative. So I'm vulnerable to it. I can be manipulated by it, in other words. So not such a cool ambition. And you see, now things start to change. And we're going to be doing this twice a week. That's why I said minimum of 4 months, right? For 2 hours twice a week. So we really get inside you. I just listen to you and hear what you say and feed it back to you. It is a profound skill. And I have a whole program called capital H hearing. It is to hear what people mean, not what they say. Because very few people actually say what they mean, right? The words say one thing and they'll say, yeah, that's not quite what I meant. So that's one of our skills. Further, we are going to listen to not only what you mean, but what you imply. We're going to extrapolate to see where you're going. And we are going to listen to what you don't say. That's very powerful. Yeah, especially if you're dealing with people who are struggling and they're shy, they're awkward. And or, in the case that you mentioned, somebody who is not quite connected and not at ease with who they are. They typically, when you start going into it a little deeper, they start to experience what I call worldview collapse. And this is very important. And it can be very traumatic. Almost all of the participants at some point in the program experienced some form of worldview collapse. Why? Because I'm sharing moreness, and it's so much more than what they even imagined it could be, that they realized, oh my goodness, I never even considered this. And so now suddenly you're in a world that's so much bigger than you, and you kind of feel a bit small because of the superiority paradigm in relation to it. And that can be a bit stressful for people. But when they start to understand it's just superiority paradigm, legacy nonsense coming in and pressing on them, and it's ego, and then, cool, and then they get through it, and then they're at peace. Because once you start letting go of ego, you find peace. Very big deal. And one of the goals, quick point, of the goal of Way of Impeccability is not just to have peace of being, that's one of them, but to develop independence of being, which is a very different thing. Independence of being. Yeah.
So where does living a deliberate life come in? Because you mentioned previously. Explain that, please. So.
All right. So when I'm living deliberately, all right. So I have to go to the supermarket. If I go to the supermarket, I got shopping to do. I have to go. It's a chore, and I'm like a bit disgruntled. But if I go and I say this is something that I want to do, I'm going to be deliberate, which implies I want to do it. And not only do I want to do it, but I'm doing it with my full attention and awareness, right? So I'm going
Can
there.
You be deliberate? Can you be deliberate with something that you don't want to do?
Absolutely. 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 So, all right, let's say I've got some unpleasant task that I have to do, right? Okay, I got a boil on my leg and I got to go to the doctor and get it lanced, right? Just for argument's sake, yeah? And I say, well, I really don't want to go. But if I go into it deliberately, right? So let me give you a better example of deliberate, right? Most people, they go to jail and they'll tell you it's a horrible experience. What about the undercover agent who goes to jail deliberately, willingly, to uncover the whole crime ring, whatever, right? Is the experience the same for that undercover agent or not? No, it's a vastly different experience. Yeah, some of it may be miserable and uncomfortable, but they can bear it, they can tolerate it, they can deal with it. Why? Because they are there deliberately. Changes everything. Changes everything.
Yeah. I get it.
So even unpleasant things can be tolerable, not necessarily pleasant, but tolerable because of deliberation.
Now, one thing, so we didn't talk about how you got into this. Now, I read your background, and I was really trying to figure out, okay, Sil breaks a light bulb, and through that discovery, he becomes make the connection for us. Make the connection for us. How did you get into it?
In the days of inner tubes, hopefully you remember them, right? Inner tubes in cars, rubber.
Yeah,
right? Right. Well, as a kids, we found lots of uses for the tubes that were got punctured or whatever. So one of them was I cut a strip about 2 feet long, a thin strip, about 2 feet by maybe 3/4 inch, and I would wrap one end around my finger and pinch it with my thumb like that, and pull the other end and shoot that stuff. And I became very proficient at this. I could shoot the ash off the tip of your cigarette, flies, mosquitoes. They never had a chance, right? So one day there's a fly sitting on this bulb in our hallway. Now, this was unusual that the bulb didn't have a lampshade on it. It was very rare. I mean, I can't even think of any other light ever that was naked like that. Nonetheless, I take aim and shoot at the fly, but I slightly miss and I hit the bulb and the whole thing explodes. So my mother comes out, because it's right, her room is right next door there, and she sees me very upset. And I said, well, I missed. And she says, well, we can't be perfect. She says to me, wow. She mistakes my upsetness as for breaking the light bulb, where I was really upset at missing. Anyway, so I don't even respond to her. I don't even answer, because this just smacks my brain. Like, I'm like, why not? I'm 10 years old. I'm like, but why not? Yeah? So, and it was already my habit to really think about things through to the end. So I went about and I did a study. I said, well, there's something wrong here, that we cannot be perfect. This makes no sense. I didn't tell my mother, sorry, that doesn't make sense. I just never even responded. I just went to my room and went to lie down and think about it. And so then I said, well, first of all, there must be something wrong with this idea of perfection. So I went and made a study, a little social sciences study. I went and asked everybody that I could, pretty much. Again, this was in a very, very conservative society. So this was quite an act of daring and took a lot of courage, I got to tell you, because when in a conservative society, when you ask questions that are out of the norm, you can get some serious feedback. And that was a day when if people didn't like what you said, they could give you a smack, Anyway, so I asked people. And I remember one older boy, he said, wow, to be perfect, that would be boring. And he could see on my face, like, but that doesn't make sense. It wouldn't be perfect if it's boring. You just said something that's oxymoronic, that's self-contradictory, that doesn't make sense. When he saw that look on my face, he realized he had that self-awareness that came. He realized, I just said something stupid. Why? Because he was just aping what he'd heard. And, well, let's just put it this way, I had to run away. So I asked people, they said, well, perfection would be boring. Perfection is impossible. So then I did my first act of philosophizing, which was to figure out, to think through to the end what perfection would be. And this is what I came up with. Perfection is a state of being from which, if you had the power to change anything at all, you would not. Exactly like that, with all the commas and pauses in it, right? Because it took me a long time to figure this out. Now, here comes the thing that really set me on my path. So then I said, well, that would be something that I would like to do. And I called it my path my path to perfection, which is to get to a state of being where, should I wish to choose anything at all, I won't change anything. That to me is an ideal place of being, right? Is it possible? I don't know. Is it worthy to pursue? Absolutely. Right. So I said, I don't know if I could get to that place, because it's dependent on if you had the power. I might not have the power. However, what do I need to even start on this path? I then said, well, I better get some awareness. And then I started to think about what awareness is. And then, oh my God, was I horrified at my lack of awareness. And this has been with me all my life, right? At that age, I don't know if you remember, but at that age, we had that massive, inordinate capacity for immersion into what we're doing. And I immersed fully into awareness, right? And of course, you're unaware for the most part. Now, I had something going for me. When I was 6 years old, there was a particular incident, that event, a significant event that happened, a memorable event and a significant experience, as I call them, which resulted in me understanding that I need to have a social side and a private side. Because what I was going on in my private side, completely, if I shared it, I would have gotten into massive trouble. I mean, I was in a culture in those very early years, which was one step away from being Amish. And I would have been seen as a rebel, as the devil is in me, God knows what all, and I would have been in trouble. But my private side, by the way, let me just make this very clear, was never a secret side. I would share with anybody if they asked. Nobody ever asked. So but that made all the difference, right? So I was internally doing everything, and my social side was being appropriate as to what it is in the social world, right? And it was all about appropriateness, which is the core fundamental conception of my entire philosophy. right? It can be called the philosophy of appropriateness. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Sil, I look up and we are running out of time, man. This is a awesome conversation. You are definitely a thought leader in the industry of self and life change. Thank you for joining our show today. Your information is immense. I'm sure you have blessed a lot of listeners today based on your alternative way of thinking, and we need more of that. So thank you for attending the show, Sil. Awesome show. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, wonderful. My absolute pleasure, Charles. My absolute pleasure. Great joy to be here. I hope we can do it again sometime.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Undiscovered Gems with our host, Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds. Brought to you by Pods Entertainment Group.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.